Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey everybody, today we're back with another guest, an amazing, kind of iconic strength athlete, Steve Pulcinella, who's done pretty much the whole gamut over his career. It seems like you went from one thing to another, which I think is actually awesome. I actually think that's really cool. So let's start. Like your name, like when I came in, I think I did my first meet in 97, and then I got serious in like 99. So like your name heard your name quite a bit when I started, and then eventually we ended up both writing and being on like the elite FTS team. But like the beginning of your career, I don't really have a lot of information on. I know you started as a teen in powerlifting.
Yeah, I started when I think my first meet I did was 14.
Wow, that's young.
Yeah. I mean, I started lifting like I was 12 years old in 1977 when the very first World's Strongest Man came on TV.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that with Bruce Wilhelm, Ken Patera, Franco Colombo, Lou Ferrigno?
I love those guys.
I saw that and I was like, I want to be Bruce Wilhelm so bad. Because not only did he beat everybody, he was just torturing everybody the whole way through. He was making fun of them and, shit talking them and laughing at them. And I was like, I love this guy. And the funny thing was, years later, I got to meet him, actually become friends with him. And he's the funniest guy. He did not disappoint. He is the most cynical yet funniest guy I've ever met. I'm not even joking.
That's funny because
an hour of comedy, you'll just be laughing.
I've always wanted. I never got a chance to meet him, but like you, I was a kid and I'm watching this. And my dad played football. I'd look through my dad's high school yearbooks, and he played football, and he was a shot putter, and he got scholarships. And I'm like, dude, I want to be big. And then like World's Strongest Man, I'm like, I want to be that big. And like Bruce always, I kind of like Ken Patera because he had crazy ass hair and shit. I like John Cole, but like when I first saw Bruce Wilhelm, I'm like, dude, this dude's kicking ass, and this guy's having a blast. Like this guy loves what he's doing.
That was the thing with him, and I saw that, and I'm like, that I just want to model myself after that guy, just having fun. And I had the same. We talked about this on a different podcast not long ago. I had the same mindset for him. It wasn't that I wanted to win, is that I wanted to make everybody else lose.
Yeah.
For some reason, that was the thing. Like showing up and thinking to myself, are these guys seriously think they could beat me right now? Like, are you serious? You have no idea what's coming.
Yeah.
Like that's the mindset. Whether I won or not, but that was how I always went into every contest.
Oh, yeah.
Even when I was driving to meets, I was like, you people have no idea what's coming down the road right now.
No, I honestly think you have to have, like, I've written a couple articles, and I did a video a long time ago. I went out in the desert and I did this video about how I am when I compete. And it's like, no, you don't understand. These are my weights now. This is my fucking platform. Right. Like, I mean, you have to have that ego to go in and do that and be like, dude, this is it. You're in my world now, motherfuckers.
And the funny thing is you don't see that anymore. Like these younger lifters, and these younger lifters are good. There are some great younger
unbelievable,
hacking those guys. Even in my own gym here, I got some really good lifters, but they don't have that mindset. Mm-hmm. They want to do well, but it's always about like, oh, we had so much fun meeting our friends, and we did this, and the girls are making brownies and bringing them the meats. It was not like that when we lifted. I don't know. Like when I first started powerlifting, it was very underground. Everybody at the meets, because you see a lot of those West Side guys back in the heyday of West Side. Everybody looked like a biker, or they just got out of jail, and they looked dangerous, and they looked scary, and everybody was strong.
Yeah.
Now, and then when people realized, well, powerlifting is scaled down, anybody can do it. You don't have to be strong. You have to be strong to be really good at it, but you don't have to be strong to compete.
Yeah.
So now you get meets, and there's like 2% of the guys there are really pretty strong. The rest of the people are kind of like, some of them look like beginners. Yeah. It wasn't like that when we started. It was like, wow, holy crap! Like, what did I get myself into here?
No, it's almost like the word that pops into my head is like, now it's like we're a powerlifting community.
Yeah,
like we went to the meet wanting to kill each other,
right?
And then we go hang out afterwards and fuck around and drink and shit.
Right.
But like on the platform, it was like, no, we want to destroy each other. Like the goal is to beat everybody. Maybe I want you to be at your best when I beat you, so I got bragging rights. But I still want to beat you. I'm not here to shake your hand or say hi.
I mean, how many times you're in a meet, maybe you gotta, hopefully this guy doesn't pull his last deadlift and beat you. You're not sitting there cheering for him. You're thinking in your mind, you're like, I hope this fucker misses this by a mile, like I want to win this shit, and it's all to this guy fucking up, and I hope he really fucks up.
Yeah.
You may not be saying it out loud, but that's what you're thinking. But I don't think the younger guys think that way. They're like, go, you can do it.
Yeah. No, it's a different aggression, I think.
I know.
And I liked it. Like, that was the fun part to me. I'm going to go here and I'm going to try to destroy everybody. Like, I want to put up the biggest goddamn number. I want to make people's jaws drop. Like, I want to walk in and people just go, crap, Chad showed up.
Exactly, right. It's like, oh no, he's here. Ah, boy. Like, that was like in Highland Games. You remember Ryan Vieira?
Oh, Jesus, yes.
When Vieira, and I competed, me and Vieira's careers were all in the same exact time. So I competed against Ryan like dozens of times. But, when Ryan showed up, and Ryan was the greatest guy ever. We were all real good friends with him. But when Ryan showed up, we all knew who's going to be second. We didn't, and there was no shot of beating the guy.
He was unbelievably dominant.
Yeah, he was like, he did it for a living. He was the only guy that was, doing it full time. Yeah. He lived in California. He could throw all year round. He didn't have another job. He only threw. So like in the winter, he would throw all in Australia and stuff. In the summer, he would throw here. He would go to, Scotland for a month. But it was almost impossible. Sanford was the only guy I've ever seen that beat him, in a 25-year span. And hardly anybody ever beat the guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was one of those guys. But again, he was also the guy that was helping us all the time.
He was really helpful. I think I got to meet. I met him a couple times because I didn't compete in Highland Games. It was basically a couple years when I almost destroyed myself in powerlifting. And he was always really nice. He was always really helpful. Yeah, and you're like, this dude's so confident. He don't give a shit. He'll help you because he's still going to beat you.
Yeah, if he, I think the best I ever did against him was I might have beat him in a 7-event meet. I might have beat him in 3 events, and one of those was kind of like a fluke. But and he was like all the time encouraging me. My stone throw, do this in your last throw. Come around, get your right foot around a little bit quicker. He was that guy. He was always coaching us, and he was a good coach. He was technically awesome. And he was well coached by when he was in college. He was a good thrower and stuff. Like, I never had any formal coaching in anything. I never had a powerlifting coach. I never had a throwing coach. I never had a strongman coach. That didn't exist back then. You know what I mean? Louis was the only coach that anybody knew of. Now nobody can lift without a coach. Powerlifting coach, programming, which is cool. Which is great. because there's guys in my gym that are pretty good coaches. At programming, everybody in here lifts that SBD style. Nobody's really doing any conjugate or west side in here. It's all USAPL. Squats, benches, and deads every day. That kind of thing. Which I could never have done. I don't think on my best day. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. They do it good too. I got a few really good young lifters that are getting progressively stronger all the time, and all they're doing is squatting, benching, and deadlifting.
Yeah, but I wonder if they're going to be able to keep that up as they get stronger.
Yeah, that's the thing. That kind of once you get into those mid-7 squats and deadlifts, it's hard to do that multiple times a week, And I'm already seeing that one of the guys here is getting very, very strong, but he's kind of plateaued a little bit because his strength level went up to a pretty high level, and now it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take to get past that. He's still just working those numbers. Without changing the exercises, he's just working the numbers.
Yeah. Throughout my career, every time I backed off, I got stronger. And every time I backed guys off on my team, everybody got stronger. But that didn't happen until we got strong enough that we needed to back off.
Right. And that's the thing. Me and Dave Tate talked about this. Me and him are the same age and started lifting very young. It's man, we worked out for 35 years before the word deload was ever even heard of. So we just were full throttle all the time.
Yeah.
That's the way everybody kind of did it. You just full throttle until something breaks, until the wheels fall off, and then you fix that and you come back and go full throttle again. And
see, I was kind of fortunate because I always trained like you. I didn't have a fucking coach, man. I had magazines, I had books. You didn't have the internet, you didn't have YouTube, and honestly, I in some ways I feel sorry for all these young kids that have all these coaches because they're just getting handed information. They're not understanding and going deeper where we had to go. If you wanted to learn, you had to figure it out.
More or less. I mean, I did everything by the seat of my pants. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't even really, read all the books and all that stuff. And I still do the same thing. I only ever did what I liked.
Yeah.
I thought what I did was kind of working. I would just go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going in those directions. Like, oh, this seems to be working. That seems to be working. I never really, and I liked that aspect. I like figuring things out for myself.
Yes.
I don't know why. I'm still the same way. Now that I'm more injured and a lot older, you really got to be smart. You really got to think your way around this injury and that injury and this injury. And one of the things I tell a lot of guys who are getting beat up is like, when you come in the gym now that you're kind of old and beat up, you got to have a plan A, a plan B, and sometimes a plan C.
Yeah.
Plan A is if you start working out, everything feels pretty good. You can get to do what you intended to do. Plan B is like, all right, my knee ain't feeling good or my shoulder ain't feeling good. I want to do this now. Plan C is like, I really feel like total shit, but I can still do a couple things here, So constantly be like switching around and all that. And like older you get less plan A workouts and more plan C workouts, but you can keep at least keep some muscle. You may not be building any new muscle at the age of 57, 58 years old, but at least you can maintain what you have.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, it's a lot easier to maintain if you just keep doing it. It's hard to build, but it's easy to maintain.
I think that's because I train a wide variety of people. And I honestly have fun training my people in their 70s and stuff. Because first of all, I have 70-year-old people that are tougher than 20-year-old people.
Without a doubt.
Like they're just mentally stronger. But I was talking.
Life in general has made them stronger.
Yes.
Before,
Yeah. I talked to them. I go, listen, here's the deal. As you get older, like you've all heard of the lady who was doing great, fell and broke her hip, and then everything went to shit. Like at 60, 70, 80 years old, missing a couple weeks is actually going to have an impact on you. Yeah. Like, so the consistency, even if it's C sessions, that consistency is actually really important to, I think, to maintain that muscle mass and maintain that health.
Yeah. Like I live my whole life now. We were just talking about this in pain, and people see me still working out, 4 or 5 days a week, and I'm in pain the whole time. You can see it on my face. Like I'm always like, oh, what the fuck, and they're looking at me like, holy shit, what is he doing? Like, why? Because that's what I like to do. I don't know. I always like to do this. I've always did it because I liked it. I was lifting weights because I really liked it. I liked competing a lot, but I always just liked being in a gym. I joined my first gym when I was 14, real raw meat kind of neighborhood bodybuilding, old school, in the basement of another building kind of gym, full of like bouncers and scary people and nut jobs. You know how it was back then. There was no girls with little shorty shorts on their asses hanging out, like no girls at all. It's just, it was kind of like you're a young kid in there, and the older guys are kind of like looking down at you like, you better not get in my way, motherfucker, before you run out of here. Like I was in a gym, the gym I worked out in, literally, I mean, we had our music system was a clock radio that the owner of the gym probably found in the trash. So it wasn't like it was a new clock radio. And, we listened to whatever, there was 2 stations, it was rock and roll, top 40. Well, these guys, grown men, would routinely go outside and have full-blown fist fights over what we were listening to that night. I still remember one guy coming in, getting 2 of his teeth knocked out, and he won the fight and was able to put on the top 40 station. And it was like Cyndi Lauper came on. I'm like, you went and got your teeth knocked out. And I was 15 years old, and I knew better. I'm like, you fucking went outside and let somebody knock your teeth out so we can listen to fucking Michael Jackson? Like, really? That's what you did? Like, really? Like, oh my God. And these are the people I was like, exposed to. People ask me like, wow, man, why'd you train so crazy? I'm like, I wasn't crazy. You should have seen these other guys,
Oh, it was definitely a different time.
Yeah. Now everybody's got their headphones on, listen to whatever they want to listen to. But back then it was like you had to literally fight someone to listen to what you wanted to listen to. Adversity
built monsters.
Yeah.
I remember when I threw at UNR, and we could go to like the gym that was like for the football players, and it's like fancy and windows and all this shit. And me and
windows.
Yeah, they had windows, and it was fucking nice, and there was machines. Like me and Kim, one of the guys from Sweden, and then we had another guy, Ray East, who was a monster squatter. We had another gym in the basement of the girls' basketball stadium, and it was like this cinder block, no windows. You went down these steep ass stairs. It was like maybe a 1-car garage, and it had like 2 power racks, 2 benches, 2 platforms. And like that's that. I'm like, go to this fucking football with these jerk off football players. Fuck that. I'm going to the basement where it's fucking dark and dank and smells, and we're going to train till we want to puke.
Yeah. That's like that little gym I was in. I remember the first time walking through the doors and going down the stairway. I'm thinking, is that mold? Like, am I smelling mold? Like, you know, as a young kid, like my mommy dropped me off. Like there was a guy in there, this little little burly Italian guy who was real like loud and boisterous. You know, everybody, you know, the older guys, you know, he had been there forever and everything. And this guy used to like to haze the younger guys, the high school kids. And he wasn't like a mean guy, but he was like, you know, he hazed us playfully yet violently. And me and my cousin Dave, who we were the same age, and we both started together, and we thought we were going to be the next Arnold and Franco. We go down there, yeah, you know. And this guy would be like, "The fuck are you idiots doing, man?" Like he would chase us around, and like he would tackle you down on the ground and like bite your ass and like shit like that. I remember one time my mom was coming to pick me up for the gym, and meanwhile she's outside waiting in the car. I'm being chased around by an adult man who's trying to bite my ass, and work call. And she finally gets out of the car, goes to walk downstairs to see where I am. She gets to the top of the steps, opens the door. I'm sprinting up the steps screaming, and this adult man tackles me and he's biting my ass. And my mom screams, "What are you doing?" And he looks up and sees my mom, gets scared, runs away. And my parents wouldn't let me go to that gym for like 2 weeks because they thought it was full like violent pedophiles. And I keep telling her, "You don't understand, Mom. This is the way it is. This is the way it is." I'm like, what? That's the way it is? And, you know, and that's really the way it was. You know, until you proved yourself, this guy would like harass you.
Yeah.
The other guys thought it was hilarious.
You know, you just reminded me. I saw a comedian a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about. He's like, "Dude, you better cherish the old people, because the old people now have great stories."
Yeah.
He goes, "What kind of stories do you think the old people are going to have 50 years from now?" He's like, they're going to be going through their phone going, "Here's a picture of what I ate. Here's what these shoes are on sale." And I'm thinking, like, what kind of good stories happen in these gyms nowadays?
I don't know. Like this, even in my gym, I've been here almost 30 years now. And like looking back 30 years ago, some of the guys are still here from then. We're like, man, it was so different back then. The whole vibe was so different, you know? First of all, nobody was wearing headphones and no one had a cell phone, obviously. So everybody was involved. Like everybody in the room, my gym's one big room. Everybody in the room was involved in the conversation or the ball busting or the, you know, challenges that were going on and stuff. And like, you never see that anymore. I mean, what's happening now is okay, but it's definitely different than what it was, you know. And a lot of the old timers think back like, man, it was so cool. It was so much fun back then.
Yeah, you couldn't just sit in the corner with your headphones. And even if you would have walked in at that time, somebody would have went over and ripped them off.
Yeah,
like
somebody would have just like...
You kind of had to be involved in what was going on. And I think that created a deeper, actual, real camaraderie.
If I could have just Bluetooth, you know, my headphones to that little clock radio, who knows where I would have been right now, you know?
So you ended up doing pretty good as a teen in powerlifting.
It was okay. Like I came in second in the undrug tested nationals when I was 19, and then I won the drug tested nationals.
Because you totaled like 16, 17 something around
17. I think my best teenage total was like 1745.
Yeah. But then you, like, shortly after that, you kind of, like, left powerlifting and went into strongman, right? I
powerlifted until I was about only like 22. Like, I really, you know, but I did a lot of meets. I do like 7 meets a year. Like, I love competing. And my total never once went down. It just kept going up, you know, little by little.
Which ideally, because
I did what I thought was the thing to make you strong was to get bigger. A lot of people like to pigeonhole themselves and be like, I want to be at 181, and they try to stay there forever.
Yeah.
You know, you can Ed Coe, what he did over the years, 148, 165, 198. He just kept getting stronger, you know, like that's the way, you know, I knew that if I want to be really, really strong, I had to be really, really, really big. So by the time I was 19, I was already at 275. You know, by the time I was 22, I was like 300.
Yeah.
But then when I had kids, like by the time I was 23, I had a house, a mortgage, a wife, a stay-at-home wife, 2 daughters, you know, one 40-hour-a-week job, paying for all that, which you could do back then, you can't do now. And so I took a little time off from competing because I didn't really, you know, the powerlifting gym I was going to had closed up, and I had these kids, and I had a pretty busy life. So I still lifted every night, but it wasn't until like late at night after you put the kids to bed, I'd go to this gym down the road and lift. But and then in like when I was about 27, I started doing. See, there was no strongman contest here back then. It wasn't a thing. They all after it shifted from the U.S. to Europe, the world's strongest man, it fell off the map in this country.
Yeah.
There was no amateur strongman contest. There was nothing at all. Matter of fact, if you remember, I don't know if you remember this far back, but like I didn't even know strongman was still even happening. But every once in a while, Powerlifting USA would show like one little half page of like OD Wilson or like one of those guys, you know, competing, or maybe Kaz. And I'm like, it's still happening somewhere. I could see it, but I don't want that. And there was no internet, so you couldn't like research where is this happening at? Why isn't it happening here? Well, like in the, you know, in the I guess the early '90s, a couple little small contests started popping up, and I saw one advertised in Powerlifting USA. Actually, it was down in Virginia. I said, "I'm going to do this." I always wanted to do it. Here it is. Now I'm going to go do it. You know, so I went. That's when I started doing that again. And I had done like a few small ones and won those, and I won the North American Championships and everything. And then when I was in Canada competing, I ran into a guy named Warren Trask. I don't remember Warren Trask. He was a Highland Games guy, and he was doing this little strongman contest. And he said to me, he goes, "Man, what do you do? You're a powerlifter? What do you pay to compete? You do Highland Games, man. We get paid to compete." I'm like, wait a minute. There's Highland Games going on somewhere outside of Scotland, and I knew a caber toss. You know, I didn't know much about this.
All right, guys, we had a little technical difficulty right there. A crazy power outage, probably from the heat or something. But we're back, and we're going to kind of pick up where we left off, where we were talking about how you went from powerlifting then into strongman, and then you were up in Canada talking to I can't remember one of the guys' names.
Yeah, so Warren Trask.
Yes. Are you
Warren Trask?
Kidding? You just hold on. You just cut. Okay, we're good. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, this guy Warren Trask was a Canadian Highland Games guy, and he's sort of told me, "Hey, you should be doing Highland Games, man. It's a lot of fun. We get paid." I'm like, "You get paid, really?" You know? So I started to like, I thought about it, but again, it was before the internet still, and I went up to see a friend of mine, Dr. Ken Lister. Remember Dr. Ken? He used to write for Powerlifting USA up at his gym. Before I started my gym, I used to go up to Long Island from Philadelphia and lifted his gym because it was the most awesome gym I still have ever seen. And him and I ended up becoming friends. So I used to go up there about once a month just to work out, hang out with those guys. He had a crazy group of guys up there, Pat Susko and all those guys. And he gave me the first few issues of Milo magazine. So in Milo magazine, Randy Straussen's magazine, he used to cover like arm wrestling, Olympic lifting, strongman, and he also covered Highland Games. And he had the issue that I got. One of the guys he featured there was a guy named Carl Braun from Virginia, who was like the national champion at the time. And it also had a little listing in there of some of the Highland Games that were going on in this country. And I'm like, oh, look at this. And there happened to be one an hour from my house. And I went there, and there was that guy, Carl Braun. This was like in the very early 90s, like 91 or something. And I remember telling my wife at the time, I'm like, that's that guy, Carl Braun. I just read about him in Milo. He's like one of the best guys out there, And turns out, the field of guys that were there, there's some really good names there. Paul Ferenczi. That's where I met Paul Ferenczi for the first time, and a few other guys. And during their lunch break, I just went down there and talked to Carl. Carl was like, I know who you are. You won the Virginia's Strongest Man contest in Fredericksburg. I live in Fredericksburg, and my gym ran that contest. So he kind of knew who I was because he was there. And he goes, yeah, let me introduce you to the guys, And he took me down on the field, and, I got to meet some of the guys and everything. At the time, I'm not a big guy. I'm like 310 at the time. So, I fit in right with those guys. They were all pretty big. And he's the one that kind of like showed me how to get involved in the amateur part of the games. Because before the internet, they had a NASGA, the North American Scottish Games Association, like newsletter, like a printed newsletter with a staple in the corner. And he happened to have a couple of the latest issue of it. And he goes, here, take this. It has all the amateur games in the area that's in the back here. And it has some articles in it, whatever. And he was like, gave me his phone number and said, I'll help you out and get you in a couple games or whatever. But I didn't know much about any of the events. There was no YouTube. There was nothing to watch or anything. So I just went to my first Highland Games as an amateur, completely cold. And like some of the other amateur guys were like showing me the events. This is a stone throw. I had thrown the shot in high school. I'm like, I know how to do that. I kind of, these are the weight throws. I'm watching guys in warm ups. Like, how do you do this again? I throw that 56 for the first time without ever having your hands on it is a humbling experience for, I don't care how big and strong you are.
The 56-pound weight is one of the most humbling things I've ever done in my entire life.
You're lucky if you don't go on your ass all 3 attempts. I went on my ass twice and got one to go out there. And so I was really good in the weight for height. I could do that. No idea how to do the caber. The hammers were a mystery, So, but I loved it. I was just, this is so cool. Just throwing stuff, outside. We're wearing kilts. It's awesome, and it just went from there. And I got involved in more and more. And like the following season, there was such a lack of pros on the East Coast. One of the guys who ran a bunch of the games around here was like, you throw with the pros, like you're as big as those guys. You're twice as big as most of the amateur guys. Although I had, my throws weren't anywhere near pro level, as soon as I got to throw with those guys all the time, my skill level went straight up. Yeah. And then Paul Ferenzi at the time lived an hour and 15 minutes from me. And he, befriended me. He was like, yeah, come on up and practice with me. And practicing with Paul was like a wealth of knowledge. That guy was a thrower. We used to call him the godfather of Highland Games because this guy lived and breathed throwing. He was a shot putter, Highland Games guy. So he helped me like shorten the curve a lot. And I just had a knack for it. I was really good at it. I loved it. And then it got to the point where I was getting paid to do it, man. It was just so much fun. And then I ended up doing it for, pretty much 20 years after that. And when I first started, like I was throwing for a few years, and David Webster was looking for a American to represent the U.S. in the World's Strongest Man. It was an invitational. It was just David Webster and Doug Edmonds. They were the guys. The other guys invited people, and they had like a lot of powerlifters in the years before me. Weren't really happy with them, and David Webster was like hell bent on getting a Highland Games thrower. And what they were looking for was a Highland Games thrower that had some strongman experience, that was really good at the weight for height, because he knew that was like a strongman event. If you could do that, you're pretty good at everything. And it was really only 2 guys in the whole country that could like fit that. It was like me, and I remember Phil Martin from California.
Yes.
Phil, like 6'5", 350, just a bear. I turned him down. I'm like, I can't hang with those guys. There's a bunch. I'm only like 6'1". Those guys are, huge. And I was doing Highland Games. I was happy with doing that. And I turned him down, and Phil said yes. And then like the last minute, Phil got hurt or something and backed out. And David Webster was like, please, can you just do it? It's like in 2 weeks. You got to go to Africa in 2 weeks and compete, like without knowing we're ever seeing these events before. I'd never seen a round stone in my life. There was no round stones. Now you see them everywhere. Every CrossFit gym's got them practically. So I went there and did horrible, but I filled in the spot that he wanted me to fill in. But I did the best I could. But essentially, at that point, I was a Highland Games guy. I wasn't a strongman really anymore.
Well, what's interesting is when I like you said, it was like strongman, there was a point where it was like dead, like you didn't even know what was going on. And then it kind of started coming back, but it was still, everyone was going to Europe.
Nobody, like, until that magazine Milo came out, I didn't know what was happening.
And I went, because it was
all going on in there. Like Kaz would go over there, and he was competing all the time.
I had, my sister had moved down to Vegas, so I would go down to visit her, and I'm like, you know what? Like Mark Phillippe's down there. I'm going to call him. And so I called him, and it took me a long time. It was a pain in the ass trying to get a hold of him. And I finally got a hold of him. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm a power lifter. I'm doing pretty good. I go, I'm kind of interested in strongman. Like, could I come? I'll help you guys train or whatever. I just want to get around it, And so he's like, yeah, I'm training with Kevin Mitchell Saturday if you want to show up. I'm like, all right, I'll be there, man. And like, I didn't hear anything else from him. And I'm like, well, okay, fuck it. I'm just going to show up. So I just go show up down in Vegas at UNLV, and it was like the same thing. It's like, dude, here's a round stone. And I'm like, I never fucking picked up a round rock before, So like we start out with light ones, and I pick it up and throw it on the block. And he's like, that's pretty good if you want to rip your biceps off. Because he's not a like super personable. He's like straight out, really dry.
I've spoken to him.
But it was like within 10 minutes of those guys showing me, I'm like, oh, there's technique to this shit. Yeah. Like that stone sucked the first time I picked it up. Once you showed me, it was easy, and I went way heavier. Yeah. We did a couple implements, and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. Like, cause it's a lot more technique than you think. And I started interviewing, I interviewed some guys at the Arnold one time. I think Scott Weech was one of them. And we were talking about how, he sucked at the log, and in his gym finally got a log. And then within like 6 months, he broke the American record.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden he had a log to train with.
Right. He wasn't trying to curl it like I used to do. Yeah.
So like even when you look back at some of the old strongmen, you're like, wow, they're lifting a whole lot more now. Well, yeah, they have it to fucking train with.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was no implements for a long time, that's what made my gym so unusual. So when I opened it, I started buying some rudimentary, strongman equipment, and I was the only one that had some of this stuff, farmer's walk handles and a couple littler stones. And I would have people driving 300 miles just to lift these little stones I had. They were nowhere near there was no molds at the time, so you couldn't really make them.
Right.
People were finding them on construction sites that were part of like the architecture of a building. Like the first one I got, that's where I got it from. Like the guy at my gym found it when they were salvaging some old building or something. So I would have people driving hours just to come lift this stupid little stone because that was all there was.
Yeah, I love the history of strength sports.
Yeah, I do too.
I think there's a lot of young guys that don't understand the history or where it went or how it evolved. Yeah. And to me, it's really interesting. And like, it's funny, your stories about the Highland Games too, because I'm like, you're telling your story and I'm like, oh my God, like that's, I hit the point in powerlifting where my depression and suicide stuff was like through the roof. And, my family sat me down, my training partners, and like, Chad, you're going to kill yourself if you don't do something else. So we came up with the plan that, hey, let's just back off of powerlifting. Why don't you try Highland Games for a while? And that way you're not killing yourself overtraining in the gym. I still kind of overtrain, I went to New England for this strongman MMA like event. They just paid me to come out and be Chad Ikes.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, you're paying for my trip across the United States. Cool, I'll do it. And I ended up going to visit Scott DePamphilis. I'm sure you know Scott.
I've stayed with Scott, yeah.
And he's like, hey, we got to go practice the Highland Games tomorrow. Do you want to go? I go, hell yeah, I want to go. And I knew Scott was a really good masters thrower. And I beat him. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. Maybe that was a good idea. So I signed up for an event in Reno. And I called the guy up. And he's like, okay, we're going to put you in the novice. And I go, no, hold on. I go, you don't understand. Like, I'm Chad Ikes. I'm not trying to be an ass, but I'm really strong. And he goes, yeah, but you've never thrown. You got to do novice. And I go, no, that's not fair. Like, that's not fair. No. And he made me throw novice. And I go, listen, you guys, I want everyone in this class to know.
This was not my idea.
This is not my idea. And I like destroyed everything. And then it was fun, man. It was fun. Like, after doing powerlifting for so long, you're like, dude, the most athletic thing I do is walk out a squat. How athletic is that? So to actually
Highland Games was like there's no it wasn't the pressure of like a strongman or a Highland or a powerlifting meet where you're gonna have 1,100 pounds of your back and it's gonna hurt and it can possibly crush you and maim you. Like you're out in the sun, you're throwing these things. If you don't throw it, they're very good. It doesn't matter. You're not gonna get hurt. It was just different. It was.
But you get to move and you get to explode, and that was like such a cool feeling. And everybody was, when I first started powerlifting, I was surprised how cool everyone in Highland Games was awesome.
Yeah.
Like if you were in novice, they're like, hey, listen, these are the rules, but let me kind of help you out through this. And we know you're a beginner. We're not going to be super strict. And then eventually when I finally got to go do, I think Woodland was one of the first ones where I got to meet some of the pro guys. And that was totally awesome because I'm like, dude, these guys are the pros, man. These guys are the shit, dude. Like, I'm going to go talk to him. And like, I'm super excited to meet him. And I'm like, dude, you're Sean Betts, man. Holy crap. You're Harrison Bailey. And they're like, you're Chad Ikes. And I'm like, you know me? And they're like, no, you know me? And like, so it was really cool. And they're all like, man, if you'd let me give you some pointers, we'd really like to see what you can do.
Yeah.
And so like, again, everybody wants to win, but they were so cool and offered to help. And I even I did a game in, games in Vegas, and I went down the first day because I had met a bunch of pros by that point, and I went down and filmed some stuff, and I think I interviewed a couple of guys. And then like Mike Pulowski stayed for the second day and basically was with me almost the whole day, like coaching me.
Oh,
And
wow.
my fucking best games ever, man. Like I
He
would,
was a really good coach.
I would throw and he's like, dude, at the end of the day, he's like, that was awesome, man. He goes, you would throw, I would go do this and you would go do it. And like that was one of my best games ever. I threw way better than I had at any other games. It was cool. Yeah. Like they were just such.
Like you have those like newbie games where you get PRs on every throw in the beginning.
Yes.
Like, then after a few years, you're like, oh man, I cannot PR this shit anymore. It's crazy.
But yeah, I thought the Highland games were. And then when I found out those guys made money,
yeah,
and at that time they were making more money than any fucking strongman or powerlifters.
I think they still do.
I mean, I was like, because a couple of them, I think was it Sean? I think Sean was a teacher. And he's like, yeah, I go throw in the summer and I make more than I did at school.
It's pretty awesome.
And I'm like, good. That's cool.
That was good. Sean was like a really, like for a guy that I don't think was like in the weight room, probably nearly as strong as us.
Yeah.
But he could throw. He knew how to do it. You know, he was really good.
Well, that's what was amazing is it's like when people want to compare who's the strongest, I'm like, well, how can you even compare that?
Right.
Like I can kill all those guys in the gym. They kick my ass. I never got to where I could never compete with the pros. I never got to that level.
We were in Syracuse one time competing. It was me and Paul Ferenci and a couple other like pro guys. It was a small meet up there. And it was Mike Ruggiero, before he went to West Side, lived up there. And him and these other big powerlifter dudes are standing on the side watching this. You know, they're watching. We're throwing the weights and everything. Then we have our lunch break and, you know, Mike comes up, his neck is this big. And we're all looking at him like, holy shit, look at this guy, man. He's crazy, huge, you know? And he's like, hey, man, like, how hard is that to do? We're like, you know, you got to practice a little bit. And you mind if I try and throw? And Paul was like, yeah, take the 56. Go take a try. You know, of course, totally mystified. You know what he was doing. He was tripping over himself. That day, to this day, he still thinks I'm the strongest guy in the world because he saw me throw that thing like 45 feet and he couldn't throw it 4 feet. And he equated that as I was way stronger than him. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But like that was the day. Like it's funny. Like to this day, we still talk. You know, and I met him there in that little Highland games. You know,
I talked to
my first games, dude. My very first games, I was, you know, just big, strong man, 300-pound guy, young, in my late 20s. The guy that won was this little old guy with a big white beard who walked up to the trig with a cigarette, put it on the trig, and threw, and put it back in his mouth and walked back and sat down. That fucking guy won that day. And I'm like, how could this guy have beat me in anything strength related? This can't be happening. And that's Highland Games, man. That's how
it's funny. It's cool because I mean, you got to have some strength, but there's a lot of technique and there's a lot of explosive speed. And so, do you still talk to Mike?
Humble yourself.
Do you still talk to Mike?
It's just online, you know. We'll exchange messages here.
I'm trying to get him to come on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
And he's kind of like, I don't really like to talk. I go, come on, dude. It'll be just like you and me bullshitting about old times, man. And I
mean, if anything, he'll have a lot of funny loose ends, you know. West Side
stuff, he's the first. It was funny. The first time I met him in person, I was at APF Seniors in Detroit, I think. And I walked in and I went, oh my God, that's the biggest motherfucker I've ever seen.
His neck was humongous.
No, yeah, it went. I actually wrote an article. I wrote my in my review of that meet for On Elite. I wrote that like his head is like a gorilla. I go, it goes from the top of his head straight into his traps.
Yeah,
like there's no fucking neck.
Yeah,
and I go, that is the biggest person. That is the biggest, closest thing to a shaved gorilla I've ever seen in my life. And funny enough, Mike, I guess he called Dave and he got my number because he like texted me or called me or something. And he's like, man, Chad, thank you so much, dude. One of my buddies showed me that article and you made my whole week, man. He goes, that was so awesome. And like, we both have body dysmorphia because he was like, dude, because I was 400 pounds at that comp. I was 397. He goes, when you walked in, he goes, all I thought was, damn, I want to be that big. And I go, no, that's what I thought about you. And I'm like, we probably both look in the mirror and go, skinny little fucker. Yeah, Highland Games is cool. I mean, now you won. Didn't you win Loon Mountain at one point or something?
I won Blue Mountain, I think, four or five
Like
times.
that's a huge competition.
Yeah. Well, the first couple years it wasn't yet, and then it started to get bigger. And then I won it one year when they had like what they called the International Challenge, and it was like all the best guys in the world were there except Ryan. I don't know what Ryan was hurt or something, and he was the only big time thrower that wasn't there. And I'm talking about guys, Peter Goodmanson was there from Iceland, and guys from Scotland, Alistair Gunn, and all the best American guys, Harrison Bailey, and all guys. And I pulled out a win that day, and that was like, man, that was like my greatest Highland Games victory and they were throwing well. And I come in last place in the first event. There's only 6 events there at the time. They didn't throw the hammer there. That's why I was able to win.
Oh, really?
The hammer sucked, and I came in last place in the stone, and then to work my way up, and then won the last 4 events somehow. Like, pulled them out of my ass, and like set all the field records and everything. I won like $4,000 that weekend. I think the most money in Highland Games.
That's awesome. So since you mentioned Alistair Gunn, how big is Alistair Gunn?
Like at his prime, he was like 225, maybe. Like, I don't know.
I used to watch his hammer videos, and I'm like, God, how does he get his whole body into it like that? And I'm like, that dude does not look big. How the hell is he throwing that far?
Nah, that's why they call him the giant killer. And he was like a 3rd generation thrower and everything.
He had the technique.
Yeah. When you see like early pictures of him, he's standing there in the field with like Jeff Capes, Bill Kazmaier, a couple other big strongmen, big Highland. He's just a scrawny little guy, and I think he beat them all. Like he beat those guys. Like he was really good, and he could even throw like the weight. Like I've even seen him. I think throw like 43 with the 56 at that
that's
size.
Just crazy.
Like, it would just come out of nowhere. Yeah, he was good. He was explosive. He was smart. He's kind of a wise ass. I liked him, but he was a wise ass. He's one of those guys. But I always liked the guy. Like we always got along.
I love wise ass.
He came to my house one time. When he came for Bethlehem, the Keller Classic is like an hour away from my house. So him and Francis would come in like, I don't know why, like 5 or 6 days early. And he said, hey, why don't you come up, pick me up and take me down to Philadelphia, show me around. Like, yeah, I'll come up. I went up there. Hey, you want to get a practice in. So I take him to the field where I practice, and we're throwing the hammers. And the hammer was like one of weaker events. Like maybe my best is like around 130 against those guys. That's not that good. And, we're throwing out there, and I'm like, he threw, I threw, and I'm out there. I'm like, man, our holes are like in the same spot. I must be throwing really well, man. I'm like keeping up with Alistair, I'm like, man, I'm doing pretty well. And next thing he goes, all right, heads up, I'm gonna really throw one now. And it goes 30 feet over my head, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not throwing that well. I was like, shit, he wasn't even trying.
I got to meet Francis. But I met him after, like, because he had, when he quit, like, I think he was down in Africa or something judging, and he got really, really sick, and he lost a lot of weight.
After he retired, he just kind of, like, he was always, like, a real, like, bodybuilder type of guy anyway.
He was, when I watched his old videos, he was, like, yoked.
He was, like, thick. Yeah,
and then when I met him, he was much thinner, but he was a really nice dude from my experience.
Strong. Yeah, he's really strong too, man. He was really
because he got to where his 28 and 56 were fucking.
Oh, they were. He was the best in the world. When I first started, he held, I think, both records. I was there when he broke the 28 record. He came to the first little gym that I had. Him and Paul. It was me, him, Paul, and Ryan Vieira. Paul. They used to stay like when they used to come for the Keller Classic. Paul lived right next to Bethlehem. He was like right there. So they would stay, Francis and Ryan would stay at Paul's house for the whole month and do some games. Like they would do like games in Maryland, I think Stone Mountain down in Georgia, come back and then do like Richmond. And, so they would do like a whole thing. So we'd have to get together a lot while they did it every year. And I remember they come down to my first little gym, and I don't know what Francis did. He clogged my toilet so bad in that gym that my landlord had to fucking actually buy a new toilet. Like, I don't know what he flushed down there. And I'm like, damn, boy, what's wrong with you? What kind of diet are you on, Francis was funny too. Like when we first met him, he was an adult man. He wasn't like mad. He's still at home with his mom, I think, like in Scotland. He wasn't married or nothing. He was like so like almost like childlike. He was really funny. Like he was like naive almost or something. He was a funny guy. I get to spend a lot of time with him because like I said, he used to stay up here all the time, like every fall. I get to compete against him a lot.
That's cool that when you have, and it goes back to kind of what we said earlier about you want to just destroy everybody, but you also like all hung out together, and it's like weird, it was like a different camaraderie than it is now. It's kind of like, where men are like, hey, if I flip you off and say fuck you, that's actually saying hello, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was cool because like we go to like some of the meets we did like Pleasanton, Bethlehem, and some of the other ones. They were like 2-day meets, so we'd spend like 3 or 4 days together, and all the same guys in the circuit. You know what I mean? It was always the same group of guys. Once you're at like the top, you're like all the top guys would compete in the same meets all the time. So I got to see the same guys, and we all became like literally the best of friends. Like still some of my best friends. So I never get to see because they're always so far away. But
yeah,
I was talking to Alistair Gunn yesterday. It was his birthday. Sending him a message and stuff. It's so cool. I got to meet, guys from Iceland. I got to know, Peter Gudmundsson, and whenever he invited me over there to do a thing, and I got to go there to compete. And it was cool. I never went to Scotland. I never competed in Scotland.
Really?
They would pay like they did like we'd have big games here, and they'd pay these guys to come over from Scotland and buy them plane tickets, give them all this money, but they would never do that the other way. If you went over there, you went on your own dime. Right. And then try to make a little bit of money to kind of defray it. But at the time when guys were going over there to do that, I was here making more money. You know what I mean? I just wanted to go where the money was. I didn't want to travel just to go to Scotland just to say I went to Scotland. Like I didn't really feel like doing that. I didn't like traveling. I hate flying. Matter of fact, since I retired from the games, I've probably been on a plane only a handful of times. Like I don't go anywhere.
It's a whole lot easier now that I'm smaller, but I still don't like it.
I just don't like the hassle of it. I don't know. I'm just not getting into it. Plus the gym I run this gym by myself, so it's a 24/7 key club gym with, 400 members that I run completely by myself, including most of the cleaning, so I'm kind of like.
That's pretty good though. And you've been in business.
In the area.
You're going on 30 years.
29 years this year. Yeah. Next year it'll be 30. I never even thought that when I started that little gym, it would be 30 years later, I'd still be here doing the same shit. Like dealing with the same crap. Like the other day, my toilet, we have one men's room toilet and one urinal. The toilet breaks. It's like one of these power flush toilets, so I don't know how to fix it. And so I had to call my plumber, but it was 4th of July weekend. It was last weekend. I couldn't get anybody to come out. So I put a sign on the stall. I reached over, like locked the stall so you can't even be opened, and then put a sign on the toilet. Didn't some guy crawl under there, take a giant shit, and it can't be flushed? So that sat there for like 2 days. And then when the plumber came, I'm like, by the way, it's like full. Like I'm still dealing with that, like after all this time, I'm like, let's just roll my eyes, man. It's like the kindergarten class sometimes. Like the other day, again, it's funny because I tell people when they join up, I said, look, we're a 24-hour gym. We're not staffed 24 hours. I'm the only one here. When I'm not here, it's being watched by cameras and a series of snitches.
Yeah.
And they are snitches. Like if this guy sends me a picture the other day, he goes, what should I do about this? There's a guy laying on his back. He's up against the mirrors. He's got his feet on the mirrors, and he's doing like little hip thruster warm up with his feet on the mirrors.
Yeah.
Mirrors are $700 a piece, like to replace these sections of mirrors.
Yeah.
And I said, go to that guy right now, make me the bad guy. I said, Steve just saw you on the camera, and he's on his way here now, and he's going to beat the living shit out of you. It's like a new member. And this dude got up and went, are you serious? He left. I haven't seen him since. Like, why would you do that? Like,
how much brains does it take?
Never tell you not to even touch a mirror. Like,
how much brains does it take to go? You could crack that whole fucking mirror.
I know, and there are some that are cracked. Like they definitely crack. I don't know.
I've never owned. Well, I own my gym, which is in my garage, so I have complete control over it.
Right.
Every gym I've ever went to, I've always been pretty good friends with the owners, and there's people that they'll claim they're like, it's my second home. I love being there. Well, then why do you treat it like shit?
I know.
Do you go and spit on the floor in your living room at home? Like, I don't understand.
They throw trash on the floor in the men's room all the time. Just throwing trash on the floor. There's a trash can there. There's trash on the floor. Like, come on, what are you doing? Like, it's not a big deal. And I don't make a big deal out of it. I'm just wondering, what are they doing? Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
If I could put a camera anywhere in this building, it would be in the men's room. Because I got to see why people are doing the things they're doing. I want to know. I don't want to see anything else. I don't want to yell at them. I just want to know how the series of events happens to where there's shit up the back of the toilet. What are you doing? Like, how are you angling yourself when you make the shit go that way instead of this way? You know, like, I just got to know. For my own curiosity, I got to know. I have these old cameras in the building that were here from before I had this building. I have like these big old ones, like black and white jobs. And they're still there because there's like a bunch of them. And I never took them down, but they're not connected to anything. I feel like getting one and just nailing it to the wall in the men's room, like facing the toilet.
Yeah, just to see if people stop.
Sitting there like, maybe I shouldn't do anything stupid in here, Just make them wonder, like, what is he doing?
It's crazy. When I was a kid, because we didn't really have the money to join a gym when I was a kid back in those days, because gyms were fucking expensive back then. So
people don't realize that gyms were a lot more expensive before the chain gyms were made it like a $10 a month experience.
Yeah, we went around and looked because I started with this old DP crappy bench that my dad had or something. And my bench is getting up to a couple 100 pounds or something. And my dad comes down to the basement and, I'm benching and this whole rack's going, and I don't know any different. I don't give a shit. And my dad's like, this is getting kind of unsafe. Maybe we need to look at other options. And we went around and looked at gyms and it's like, we need a $500 deposit. Then it's $100 a month. And I'm like, dude, I blue collar. We couldn't afford that, But so I would borrow everything from if my buddy's dad had weights in his basement, I'm like, hey, can we go ask your dad if he still wants those? Because I'll take them. And I had my best friend was actually lifting with me for a while and he wouldn't put the dumbbells back where they went. And I'm like, dude, we're best friends. We're still best friends. You can no longer train in my gym.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. If you can't respect the equipment, too bad.
My first bench was literally purchased at a toy store. Little skinny little bench. Yeah. I benched 275 on that thing before I real gym. And I'm like, I look back now and I can't believe I did that.
Was it one of the old ones where the uprights are this far apart?
Yeah.
So you had to be really careful when you put weight on it so you don't flip the whole thing over.
And we live near York, we're only an hour and a half away from York Barbell. So me and my brother convinced my dad to buy us a York 400-pound set. So I had the long bar too. I had a living bar. So you had to really balance that thing on there. Yeah, all my friends thought I was the shit because I had a real barbell set.
Yeah.
That's come to your house and work out. You got a real barbell set, man.
Those are the days. Those were great days.
Even the first gym I joined. I mean, when I lived there for years, and that's where I made most of my size and strength gains probably. There wasn't a bar there that had any knurling. And this gym had been there since 1962. They just tore it down. As a matter of fact, it was next door to my gym. Literally, my driveway and the building was right there. I bought the building next to it and put my gym in. And that place they didn't lose one member. It just stayed forever until the guy died. They just tore it down. But there was not a bar in there that had any knurling on it. They were York bars from the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
He bought them secondhand in 1962. So the bars were all rusty. Half of them were bent and everything. And these kids in here today are fighting over the one Rogue Ohio bar that's black instead of the other color. They're all they always call them a bunch of prissy little princesses worried about which bar. I'm like, man, you should have lifted where I lifted. Holy crap. If you get beat up, you got to use the
I think there is a lot of that though. Even now every gym almost it seems has some strongman equipment. Yeah. Every gym has. I was laughing. I was talking about the one the other day. I have a winning belt squat, and I saw Winning doing those hip thruster bridge things.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah,
and I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I never did that on there. And it's now there's people that there's actually that machine that people buy and put in their gym.
There's lots of
and it takes up a huge amount of space to do one fucking thing.
Yeah,
and I'm like, you people won't even put a bar on your hips because you're like, oh, that hurts. It hurts to have the bar on my hips.
I'll get a phone call once a month from a girl that'll ask me if I have a hip thruster machine. I'm like, nah,
really?
Yeah. That's the number one thing people always seem to be looking for.
If you want your fucking ass to grow, do some fucking
exercise doesn't do a whole hell of a lot. I don't even think that glute guy, what's his name, even tells people to do that shit anymore. What's that guy's name? That expert. I can't remember the guy's name. He calls himself the glute guy. He was always big on the bridges. Now I heard you saying, bridges don't work.
Yeah, I don't understand. It's just It's a whole different thing. I think that's why I liked growing up in my basement and stuff. Because I'd look at a magazine or something and go, we don't have that. Well, how else can we do it? What else can I do to get that muscle to grow?
I mean, every machine is just an imitation of some kind of barbell or dumbbell exercise. Like every fly machine is, you can do dumbbell flies. So that's why, like in my gym, although it's, I got good equipment, I don't have a huge variety of machines. I only got a couple hammer strength here and there, leg extension, leg curl, leg press, hack squat, all. But like the rest of it's just bars and racks and benches. But I've had some really good bodybuilders in here. You know what I mean? That have built great physiques because now they have to do squats instead of, some fancy this machine or that machine, or they have to bench because there's no chest, hammer strength machine in here and all that. But they built amazing physiques,
Yeah.
So that can be done. Look at the old timers from the 50s. I mean, this is Reg Park and them guys. That's all they did. And believe me, if Reg Park walked in here now, he'd be the best built guy here, Like,
oh yeah.
So I mean, it wasn't like they were building sucky physiques. They weren't,
Yeah, I think it's gotten too light, and then I question the mentality. As we always say, adversity. You grow from adversity. You don't grow from things being easy.
Right. I'm not saying that it's better to do it that way, but it can be done. It's the way I mean, I'm sure Arnold Schwarzenegger, the first bunch of years he lifted weights, he didn't have any kind of fancy equipment. The guy was in a little town in Austria.
Yeah.
He built all that with dumbbells and barbells and pull-ups and stuff like that.
Well, even a lot of the stuff they did, I don't think they had that many machines back then. Like Nautilus was coming out, but even then,
and Nautilus wasn't until like the 60s or so. Yeah.
And I was watching one. What did I watch? Some like African dude or something, and he like lifts with like concrete blocks, and this dude's yoked. Like
the big black guy, that Iron Bibby guy, that guy.
He's another one too.
Man. Yeah, there's that guy there. He's huge.
Yeah, and those guys, they're just like, here's what I have to work with.
Yeah, we got like some stones and some, I see like those old that old videotape we bought from Iron Mind Enterprises back in the day of the Bulgarian team, and when they were the best in the world in like the mid 80s, and they had Kev as their coach and everything, and people think they're like real high tech, but they were lifting in a little crappy little like unair conditioned, unheated garage on the junkiest equipment. The weights were so busted up. The platforms were just dilapidated wooden platforms and everything. And these guys are the best in the world. So they didn't have like it wasn't like, when you see Rocky 4, when you saw Rocky training old school and the Russian training real, like it was actually the other way around, those guys had shit, and we had all that high tech stuff. That's the way people don't realize that.
And if you look back at any of those people, even if you look back at Westside back in the day, dude, first of all, everybody goes, they were wearing gear. No, those guys were strong as piss either way.
Yeah, and that gear, early on, that gear was shit.
Yeah.
I remember the beginnings of gear. Like I was there when Marathon came out with the squat suits, bench and the early bench shirts and their early knee wraps, which were just springy nothingness. You know what I mean? Like I remember that stuff. There's guys like Arcidi on the bench 700 of those things. That shirt wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, that shirt.
Between attempts, he's standing there with his arms down like this. I mean, his shirt was not doing anything.
I would question some of those shirts actually took a little bit away because like trying to get into a good groove with some of them shirts was fucking damn near impossible.
Right. When they had when they were polyester and your armholes were like this, and you had to like stand like this, look at your hands on somebody else's shoulders between lifts and all that. Yeah. I remember when they first came out, like in the early 80s, and we'd see some of the older guys would wear them because that's how it first started. Like it was for guys that had like busted up shoulders that still wanted the bench, and some of the Masters guys you'd see them wearing them. We used to laugh like they're doing nothing. You just put that shirt on, took you half an hour, you're not gonna get anything out of it.
And it was exhausting getting us putting things on.
It was exhausting just watching. I remember the first time I went to Elite FTS. We went to one of the we had one of the seminars, and this is when I met you, and me and Chad Wesley Smith we were the new guys, me and him, and I think the other Andy and a couple other guys. So we were the new guys there. We didn't really know anybody. So him and I had just met, and we were the only guys there that weren't powerlifters. And we did like our whole workout, and all you guys are still hanging off of shit, trying to get your squat suits on. You guys hadn't even did one squat yet. We already worked out for like 3 hours and we were done. And then we had to wait around for you guys to get done so we could go to dinner. We were like, holy shit. And I remember you were benching and I was like, man, these guys are crazy.
It's
I remember, like,
so true
trying
though.
on, like, they would put on like 3 suits so they got one that fit. I remember Dave was like, oh, you guys can, go in the warehouse and, take anything you want. He was giving guys like stacks of that metal gear. Here's stacks of this, stacks of that. So I went in and none of the shirts were over 2X. I couldn't wear any of those. I came out with a hat. Dave's like, a hat? That's what you took? A hat? Just a hat? I'm like, I don't need anything else. This is all right. He was laughing at me. He's like, all that shit in there, all you found was a hat. What are they gonna do? Take a bed shirt? I don't want a bed shirt.
I was kind of like that though, because I never had. I was never one of those guys that was into like all the different gear. And I thought, listen, Dave's willing to sponsor me and help me out. Like, I'm not going to abuse that.
Yeah.
And like, so like I would stop by there and Dave's like, you need a new squat suit, you need this. And I'm like, all right, I'm good. And he's like, what do you mean you're good? You need like 3 suits. I go, I can only squat at 1 suit at a time. Like, why do I need 3 suits?
Well, it doesn't fit.
And I was like, just give me an off the shelf. And if it does break, then I'll just get a new one. And it'll fit exactly like the other one did.
They were cool. They were fun those early days. We used to do that, go down there for those seminars, which really was just more like a fan fest kind of thing. It seemed like, because I think a lot of the people there were pretty good lifters. I think people don't realize, like, before social media, the elite FTS guys were like the cool kids of lifting. It was like Wendler, Rhodes, it was you, it was a couple of the guys, Dave, and to be asked to be on that. I remember when I got on, Dave had just put a shout out. This is the first time he had ever done this. Like, put a shout out for some new blood. He wanted to pick some new people for the squad. And I didn't apply for it. I didn't really care. I didn't want to do it. Dave called me. I had met Dave one time before. He had a business seminar at the first. Remember the very first gym that was in the middle of a field? It was like this shack. It wasn't even
that was the one where they had like the building and then they had another one behind it.
It was
before that.
Yeah, it was before that. So he had this, and it was the middle of winter, and it had no heat in it. It was like wind was like whistling through it, like we were just doing this seminar. Like, anyway, so I met him there. I didn't really spend much time with him, but when he had this like shout out for some new people, every like 4,000 people applied. Oh, you had to write in why you think you'd be a good fit. I didn't apply. I didn't know anything about it. Dave calls me up, says, I want you to write. I want you to, be part of the team. I'm like, for what? Like, I'm not a power lifter. I don't really do anything. I'm just a Highland Games guy. And I wasn't really at the end of my career, really, at that point. And he goes, no, I forget what he said. He saw me do something somewhere on like a YouTube video or something. He goes, I want you to do whatever you want to do. Write about whatever you want. Write about the gym. Write about this. I'm like, I've never written really much of anything ever before. I'm not a very well-educated man. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. I ended up being, I remember he should come out with like the stats of who was like, I was like, I ended up being like right below him and Jim Wendler every month after that. And all I did was write about like people shitting in the floor in my gym and like just, dumb shit like that. It was like, I guess people were tired because all the other guys ever did was write, max day upper, dynamic day lower, max day upper. It was the same all the way across. Except for maybe, Jim Wendler, who was writing some pretty good stuff too. But I don't know. This just became, this. I was like the outcast guy who just wrote about silly stuff, made silly videos and all that.
That was funny though, because I used to post. That was my training log was the first place I opened up about my depression and suicide stuff that I dealt with. But I used to post like tons of my photography and stuff because I was selling photography at the time too. And Dave would call me up and he'd be like, "Hey, nobody gives 2 shits about your training log." He's like, post more photography. He goes, every time you post photography, dude, your hits go through the roof.
That's what Dave used to say to me. I'm like, what did you just write? Write about that some more. I'm like, what? I can't remember what the hell he even said. He's like, whatever it was.
He actually told me one time, he goes, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to make up an exercise and just give it some crazy ass name. And then no matter how many people ask, don't ever give a definition of what it is. And I'm like, but Dave, this is like your business. This is like serious shit. And he's like, no, dude, it'll be hysterical.
He told me at like one point, like at the height of my popularity on the site, he was like, you got to write an ebook. Write an ebook about anything. Doesn't matter what it is. You're going to make a lot of money because everyone will buy it. I'm like, I don't really know how to write a book. Like, I've even read a book. And he goes, just make sure it has some kind of routine in it. Like, I don't have fucking routines, So I kind of like worked up this routine that we kind of like, I pieced together like parts of other routines that we used to actually use here, like when we were doing strongman training and all that. But the rest of the book is, I don't know if you ever read it. It's silly. It's just funny stuff and like weird stuff. And it made like $6,000 in the first day.
Really?
Because they've launched it like right around Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
He launched his ebook, and he was like, at the time, he was like blasting out like 5 emails a day, and that was like the very first thing on the email. And literally, like my first residual check was like $7,000 or $8,000 in the first month, and like he says, all that was almost on the very first day. And I was like, holy crap! And of course, after that, it trickles down. And he told me how much Wendler was making, on all his books.
Wendler made a lot. Yeah,
I know. Dave was like, the checks were writing to him, man. You should see them. They're big. And I'm like, God damn. I blew my load on that book because I ran out of ideas after that. I couldn't write another one.
Well, it's kind of, it's kind of interesting because I looked one time and I've written like hundreds of articles, which I look back and go, how the fuck did I come up with that much shit to talk about?
Yeah.
And then
it was hard. Like, it was hard to do.
Yeah.
That's why I stopped writing. I just ran out of things to write about because it was getting hard.
Yeah.
To write 4 times a week or 5 times a week.
Well, I think I'm kind of guessing that me and you kind of have a similar outtake on this whole training thing, where it's like, dude, here's the rules to follow. Just keep following them.
Yeah.
Like, it's not this stupid. This isn't rocket science.
Right.
Like I know a lot of people want to like
continuous application of the same shit.
Yeah, and so there's a point where you're like, dude, I'm just writing about the same shit now.
Yeah. That's what ends up happening.
And then I think I still listen to a lot. I'm still trying to learn. I still feel like I have more to learn. So I listen to a lot of people, and I have friends like Chris Duffin, who's super scientific out there.
He's the one guy out there that has a lot of like new ideas.
Yeah, and
there's very few guys that have new valid ideas that actually work.
I keep going, but it's still pretty simple to me. Like I just have this blue collar. Like, dude, if you follow these rules, you're gonna get stronger.
Right. I always tell people like what I think made me strong, I can't teach because I really just did it by just sheer will. I just wanted it so bad that everything I did so hard and with so much effort and so much passion that I just can't I can't bottle that. I can't package it anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't the things that I was doing. It was the way that I was doing them,
Well, I think I said for years, I told the story for years. I go, I remember being at the WPO. I remember looking around. I go, I'm literally with maybe 1 or 2 of the best in the world are hurt and they're not here. But I'm literally in a room with 20 of the greatest super heavyweights ever. And I know them all. I'm like, I'm going to come up with the greatest fucking program ever. And that was one of my dumbest thoughts I've ever had.
Right.
Because
forcing a program out of yourself.
Yeah, I'm talking to everybody and I'm like, wait a minute, nobody's doing any of the same shit.
Nah,
there's 20 people and there's 20 different fucking programs.
Yeah.
So I went, okay, Chad, you think you're blue collar and you're like kind of scientific, like let's rework this whole thing. And that's when I kind of, what you just said, I kind of went back and I go, wait a minute, you know what the common ground is in all these guys? Their fucking mentalities. Every one of them are like, I'm going to do this and I don't give a fuck what it takes to do this. I'm going to be one of the best, period.
Right.
And then they just keep hammering it out.
It's like, you can't just look at a guy like Chuck Vogelpohl and go, if I just do what he's doing, like, you're not doing it like he's doing it, though. Nobody's doing it like he's doing it. Like, that's the thing. It's like, you can follow the same program letter for letter, but you're not going to be Chuck Vogelpohl. You're not going to be Ed Cohen,
And that's where I think it's interesting, like when you mentioned about not having a coach or nothing like that. And I was kind of like, I never really had a coach. I think I had guys like Dave. I'd go to a seminar, I'd learn from Dave, and then I had a guy, if things didn't work out, I could call him up and go, hey, man, things aren't working. But even with Dave goes, well, fine, what do you think you should be doing? And I'd tell him, and he'd be like, why aren't you doing that? And I'm like, fuck you, Dave. Okay, I'll do it.
Because he knew the answer, and you knew the answer too. He was just trying to get you to admit, yeah, I need to do this better or harder or something. You don't need to do anything different.
And it's kind of like you say, if you find somebody that has the passion, they're going to figure out how to do it. Like, it's not that complicated. So I think, like, to me, if I were to rate them, I'm like, dude, mentality is way more important in your program.
Oh, without
I
a
think
doubt.
if you have the right mentality, you're going to make any
Yeah.
program work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, any great lift you've ever seen, they've had it upstairs. It's always, it's always the way. You never see any like dopey dudes come in the gym and get very far, Just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's that passion, it's that drive, it's that will. And I mean, I think
lots of steroids and lots of steroids.
Oh, so now that you said that, I'm on both sides of the steroid thing, because I put up huge numbers. I went like 2460 clean. Then I kept getting sick. We found out I had low testosterone, so they wanted to put me on testosterone, which is funny too, because my doctor was a Masters Highland game thrower, and I go, dude, you know who I am and you know what I've lifted. How is this even possible? And he goes, I honestly don't know, but you did it. So then they put me on, and once they put me on, I'm like, okay, well, might as well experiment now. But I never saw, me and Dave argue about it. Dave's like, your numbers went crazy. And I go, not really. They kept going up just like they were. But the fact is I get so sick of people throwing the steroid excuse out there.
Yeah, I mean,
and so like I'm compiling all these different guys, and I want to have Blaine Sumner back on. I want to have God dang it, the big SS bencher guy. I can't think of his name right now. I have a huge problem with names.
Maddox?
No, shirted. Kolb, Jimmy. God damn it. Why can't I think of Jimmy? I talked to him. I want to have him back on. Like, I know, Donnie actually put up huge numbers clean. Mark Bartley put up huge numbers clean. Like, it drives me nuts that everybody uses steroids as an excuse. And you too. And I know a lot of those Highland Games guys that were clean too.
Yeah.
I mean, these some bitches are like explosive, strong dudes.
As far as I know, in my era, I don't think any of us were doing anything.
Yeah.
I just can't see any of those guys doing that. Again, we got tested here and there throughout the year, maybe once or twice. There was some meets that were testing us. I don't remember anybody ever getting caught, but I mean, just, again, none of us were like, Thor Bjornsson size either, though, you know what I mean? So, if we were competing against guys like that guy's an animal, but, I think the guys in my era, they put up some big numbers, and they were legit drug free.
Yeah. And I hate that.
It was right after my era, I could see, I know who was doing what, because I was running the Nationals. I was the athletic director at the Nationals. Mm-hmm. And I was told, I was dead set against it. I was told because they stopped drug testing there for a little while because it got stupid. And I was told we're going to drug test every competitor. I said, we don't have to do that. We don't need that. I said, this is the Olympics. It's just Highland Games. I mean, why do you want to do that? You bring the word steroids into it, and then everybody thinks steroids. You know what I mean? Yes. Like, we don't have to make a big deal about it. It's a fringe sport. It's not that much money involved, a few $1,000 tops, But the old people that ran it, and then we would invite, the top 10 ranked guys, and like 3 of them would never show up. And we knew why.
Yeah.
And then we started getting, this backlash. One guy, and I'm like, they were like, they thought it was my idea. I said, no, I told them, no, let's not worry about this crap. Because then if you catch somebody, then you got to deal with that. Mm-hmm. At the time, like, there were people that have gotten, and there was a female who kept getting caught in California, and then she would just call her lawyer up and have her lawyer come in, and then they would back off. And it was like, that's all that's going to happen. You know what I mean? You're going to open up a whole, like, Pandora's box of bullshit that's not necessary at all. So just don't bother doing it.
Yeah.
But they did it anyway. I think they still do it. They test every person.
Well, it's funny too, because like all the top guys that I know that are clean don't give two shits either way.
Not really.
They're like, yeah, people are doing it. So what? I'm going to beat them either way. I don't really give a shit.
Yeah, like I competed in some strongman stuff. Of course, there was guys they were using. And if I beat them, I felt good about it. Like, I can beat this guy, It's not a big deal. You still got to be good. It's just you're taking some drugs. Doesn't mean you're going to be good. It doesn't mean anything, really, If you're good and you take drugs, you get better.
Yeah. I kind of wonder about that, too. To me, it seems like a speed thing.
Yeah, Highland Games.
Like it's going to help
don't make you necessarily better.
It's going to help you get stronger faster than somebody who's clean. But if you're clean and you're smart, I think you can still get there. It just ain't going to come as quick.
Right. When I got involved in the Highland Games, I was already in world-class strength. You know what I mean? Like, strength wasn't my problem. And again, that was good for me because that's the part that's the hardest to do and the longest to do.
Right.
So I already had that. I just had to practice my ass off. And I did. I practiced until the sun went down, man, to try to learn that. Because again, I was thrown into the pros really quick. And I really wanted to keep up with those guys. I really wanted to rise to the top. And the only way to do that was just practice. It's just like relentlessly practicing. And again, without having cameras and stuff set up, without having YouTube videos to watch, I'm just doing it all by memory. You know, I remember just certain aspects of things here and there, maybe bouncing ideas off guys at well, you know, the content, you know, when we were competing. But like other than that, all the practices were like mostly sight unseen, unless I can get with Paul Ferenci or somebody else that really knew, had a good eye.
Right.
But like then we started. Then after a while, I started practicing with me, Paul, Harrison Bailey, Troy Hurd, a bunch of guys. We'd be out there and have these like unbelievable practices, you know, because me and Harrison were throwing really far at the time. And then, you know,
well, then you got other guys watching you that actually know what they're doing.
Right.
And I still think there's that you're around guys that are going to push you. Like just being around better guys is going to, you're like, dude, I got to keep up, man. And it goes back to that mentality of like, I don't give a fuck. I got to keep up with these guys.
Yeah, when Harrison started coming along, and him and I got to practice together a few times, and we competed a lot together because he lived near me. And you know, we were just like, he was trying really hard to get to where I was, and then he got really good. And then I was trying really hard trying to keep up with him after a while. You know, it was fun. Like we used to really throw far. When we was practice, we would just be throwing further and further and further and further. I have an interview. I think I have one with Sean Betts. I interviewed Harrison Bailey, and I like posted them on my old YouTube channel. But I should probably try to repost those. I liked Harrison Bailey. He was a cool dude. Because I had always heard that he did split leg squats with like 315. Probably, I think I may have seen him do that.
And I called him out in the podcast. I go, listen, I've never heard you talk about your strength, but I hear rumors. So I'm going to ask you straight out. And he was like, yeah. Like he doesn't like to bring a lot of attention to it.
I don't think he claimed that he was even that strong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he was, you know. His big thing was he was a really good athlete. He was just athletic as hell.
Yeah, explosive.
You know, he was real good discus thrower in college.
He moved well. He just moved well.
He just moved real well. Yeah, he was smart and he was fast. And he was like he really knew how to practice. You know what I mean? He got better and better and better and better. Like the more he practiced, the better he got. You know, It was crazy. Again, he started out practicing with Paul Ferenci long before he actually threw Highland Games because he was in college and Paul was his throwing coach.
Oh.
So he lived in the same town Paul did. So he would go out and practice with Paul, but he was in college. He really didn't want to do any Highland Games until he graduated. So he was in throwing for a long time. The very first amateur meet he did, he broke like 4 world records in that meet. Really? Like the light hammer, like 140. He did 28, like in the low 80s, like in his very first meet. Like, because he'd been practicing forever with me and Paul, you know, and he was this young guy in college. Yeah, so he was really cool. It's funny because he had this sort of like early on, we started competing against each other. I was already, you know, more of a complete thrower. He was really good at certain things, but couldn't throw a caber, couldn't throw the weight for height for some reason. Didn't really pick up the sheath just yet. He got really good at the sheath. But then he started doing like this spinning weight for height thing and was able to like all of a sudden beat me. Like nobody could beat me the weight for height for years. Because I was throwing like the mid 17s and nobody else was doing that. And all of a sudden here he is spinning. He goes to 16, then he gets to 17, then he's at 18. I'm like, fucker. So he had to invent a new way to throw and just to try to get me in the overalls because he would do real well the first 4 events. Then it came time for the sheath, caber, and the weight for height. I'd catch up to him and beat the overalls. And then once he figured that out. So then when I became the athletic director, I couldn't stand the fact that all of a sudden now everybody's throwing this spinning weight for height. You throw higher than me. So when I became the athletic director of the Celtic Classic, the national championships, I outlawed it and killed it. I was the one that killed it because what happened was all through the season, you couldn't to put your weight for height number into the database that we used to pick the top 10 guys for the nationals. You had to put a standing weight for height number. So then everybody stopped doing it because they had to spin. So they had to have standing numbers in the database. So I essentially killed it.
I remember.
I wasn't even throwing anymore.
There was even like because I think I started Highland Games in, God, what was it? Man, it had to be mid 2000s, and there was the guys were doing the spin for the weight for, and there was like this. I'm like, dude, this is like raw versus gear in powerlifting.
It really
guys
was.
Were like, no, that's not traditional. Traditional is standing.
Yeah. And it was always that thing with me and Harrison, because like the two top guys at both at either one. So we would always have this big rivalry, and I'd be like, this is bullshit. Look at this crap, and bullshit. They would actually have us like we would do like, I think we did like an interview when we were out when the Nationals were in Portland. We did this interview with some television show where we both argued about like maybe like we argued back and forth, like playfully, but I'm like, it's crap, it's trickery, it's he came in here and he started making up his own rules and we can't have that,
It is pretty interesting though, because like that traditionally was like, without reading rules or anything, I would have assumed no, you have to have your feet like on the ground to do this.
I mean, that's what I said. Like David, when it first started coming on here in the United States, Scotland, they were like, do not bring that crap here. Do not do that. You're not doing that here. Never allowed it, kind of thing. Well, if they're not allowing it there, why are we allowing it here? But
yeah,
whatever.
I tried it like a couple times and I'm like, nah, I don't even want to spend the time to learn to do this.
You know what I used to do? I used to purposely do this when, before the weight for height, you just do a couple warm-ups, throw it up and down a few times. I would purposely figure out where Harrison was going to start his spin, and that's where I'd do my warm-ups, make a bunch of big holes right where he had to stand. And he would get their first throw and be like, hey, what the hell? What the hell, man? Like, to this day, I don't think he even knows I did it. I was doing it every game.
Oh, that's funny.
I had to do something.
Yeah, it was the Highland Games are fun. I don't know. I might do some Masters stuff. I don't know.
Oh, I wish I could still do it. I can't believe that some of the guys that I used to throw with way back then are still throwing, like Zolkowicz. Like Mike Zolkowicz isn't throwing for, I don't know how long that guy's going to keep going, man. It's crazy. I don't know how their bodies are. It's a panthless too.
Yeah, he's still throwing.
He's been throwing for a long time. I don't know how they do it, man.
I can because I had a back injury, but it's healing up good. So I think once that's healed up, I mean, my knees and hips and everything are fine. I think the hard part for me is, and this is probably something we could talk about too, you can't hold on to it. Like there's a point where you're not going to be as strong as you were. You're not going to be as big as you were. Like, and that kind of sucks and it kind of does. And I look at it as like, that's just another challenge for me. But like, so if I went and did Highland Games now, I really got to like have the perspective of, hey, Chad, this is a hobby that you can't go balls to the wall into this. Like you need to try to have fun without being stupid. And that would be hard for me.
Also, like how bad do you want to suck before you retire kind of thing? Like
that,
I was a pretty good thrower for a bunch of years. And I want to leave my legacy as this little old man out there still trying to throw these weights and sucking. Like when I first became a master, I was still like really big and strong.
Yeah.
Like it's still really like a viable professional. I could still throw the 56 really far. And here I am throwing the 42 for the first time. Well, I go to my first Masters meet and they got me in the rotation with like some guy that was like 80. So he would go up and throw the 42 like 3 feet in front of the tree. And I came up after him like, T.I.E. And I really like 75 feet. And I like it's just like, so the crowd was probably like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on here? Why is that young man beating up on all these old men? I'm like, I don't know. They threw us in the same rotation. That's way. I think there's even a woman, like an old lady in there at one point I was throwing against. I'm like, oh my God.
I was thinking about, I'm like, dude, maybe I'll do Masters shot put. Cause that's not like my main thing. I actually talked to Dave. This was like last year or something like that. And we were talking and I'm like, yeah, I think I could go in and just smash Masters powerlifting records right now. And Dave goes, yeah, but he goes, I know you. I know the very first thought that'll pop into your head. And I'm like, oh yeah. And he goes, yeah, you're going to go, I had real world records. And I went, yeah, you're probably right. That's probably the first thing I would think. Yeah, but I'm like, but shot put.
What am I doing here?
I mean, I kind of threw it in college, but I was never really that good. I go, so I'm kind of coming out of it. And And then I looked it up and I'm like, dude, I don't even have to throw a 16. I get to throw like a fucking, I don't know, whatever the kilo is, like 6 kilo or something.
Yeah,
so it's like 13 pounds. And I go, oh, interesting.
And that would feel like nothing. That feel great.
But yeah, definitely as we get older and get smaller, and it's an interesting challenge in itself, I think.
Yeah, definitely a large part of my life is now missing because I can't compete, because I really like doing it. The one other thing I liked about Highland Games was because I really like to lift weights as well. But Highland Games was cool because it was like 6 months on, 6 months off, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like for 6 months you're throwing, and then you can 6 months lift, and then throw. It was nice, it kind of broke up the year for you. So by the time the season was done, you were hungry to lift. And by the time the season started, you were hungry to throw. That was kind of what kept the interest. I didn't get burned out because a lot of guys now they're throwing all year round. I don't know how they do it. Like I couldn't throw, and it was like
I don't know how you could.
outside.
I don't know how you could continue to gain strength and throw. Like I remember talking to Ryan Vieira one time, and we were talking about. And he's like, "Yeah, in the beginning of the season, I can usually bench this, but I throw this. By the end of the season, my bench is way down, but my throw is way up.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, now it's time to get strong again and gain the strength back. And then so like you have these. It kind of made sense to have these waves, because I mean, you can't if you train your ass off. I mean, a lot of the Highland Games guys that I knew were throwing. Some of them every weekend or 3 times a month or something.
I competed like over 20 times a year.
I mean, how can you push yourself hard in the gym when you're competing that much? You really can't.
No. Like I probably during the season, I would lift twice a week, and that would be like 2 or 3 exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Just like high pulls or like hang snatches, light front squats, or like even a good morning. Like I did these like good morning, like explosive good morning jump squat things I used to do for like the weight for height, and that would be it. Like maybe like a quick push presses and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be it. Like that's what I would do all summer pretty much. But then I would throw 4 nights a week, and then compete on the weekends.
Right. And if you look at most athletes, that's what they do. Like a football player is not. They're a lot weaker at the end of the season than the beginning of the season. That's why they end up getting hurt and stuff. Like. It's basically like, hey, I want to try to maintain as much strength as I can through the season because I got to focus on throwing.
Yeah, that's all it was really. And plus, the things you're throwing are so heavy. There's strength gains to be made that way too. Mm-hmm. I mean, the more you throw that 56, the lighter it feels.
Yes.
Now, the first time you get out there in the spring, your first practice after sitting around for 5 months, that thing feels like a ton. Mm-hmm. There's one sitting right there. I can't even carry that across the room. I don't even know how I used to throw that thing. And, my Highland Games weights are in my garage. I'm like, pick them up. I'm like, how did I ever throw this so far? Like, I can't believe I used to do that.
It's so fun. I could manhandle the 42 because like the first time I went through a Scott, I think he was throwing the 42 because he was a Masters in, and I could manhandle the 42. So I thought 56, no problem.
Totally
no, totally. I don't know why. Because it's only what is that? I'm no good at math. It's 14 pounds heavier. But that 14 pounds, and I mean, I was still big the first time I threw. I think I was still like 360. That thing fucking threw me around. Like I tried to muscle it, and you can't muscle it.
It's because the more you muscle it, the faster you're making it go. The faster you make it go, the heavier it's getting.
Yeah.
So if you're off balance by a little bit, and that's spinning around at arm's length. Mm-hmm. Now it weighs like 500 pounds, because you're like the centrifugal force is making it heavier. So you got to be balanced, The 42 was like, I had a real sweet spot for it. I don't know why. Like, I was good at the 28. I was pretty good at the 56. But, man, that 42, I would just hit these perfect throws with it. It was so nice. And I think the reason is like early on when I started throwing as a pro, I met a guy from Canada named Harry McDonald. And we used to throw together a lot. And he's the one that told me, he goes, get yourself a 42. Don't practice 56 that much. He goes, if I were you, I would throw the 42 3 out of the 4 times you throw the weight, and then throw the 56 the other 1 time. He goes, because that'll teach you the positions you want to be, and it'll teach you the balance without having to be like all over the place with that 56. And that's when I really started throwing it far, when I started doing that. And I tell a lot of younger throwers that too. I'm like, get yourself a lighter weight, a 42 or somewhere around between 40 and 45 if you can get something like that.
No, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Because the 56 is so big too. Even if you throw it well, if you're throwing it hard, you only got about 10 throws in you, then you're gassed. The 42 you can throw like 20 times.
And even if I tried to break the throw down and do like just the last spin or something, the 56 is still hard.
You can't do it
to feel where your balance and everything should be. That actually makes a lot of sense to me to use a 42 or 45 or something to feel it and get used to it and then go up.
This, a lot of the top pros now, especially the one guy, John, I forget his last name. He's like the world champion now. He one spin. They're all one spinning the 56 and throwing it far. This guy threw the thing. Really? He one spin at like 49.5 feet a couple weeks ago, which boggles my mind. That's a big, strong guy that can do that.
Yeah.
I don't think I have ever done that. Nor did I ever try, but I can't see.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if anybody was even doing that when I was throwing, like just doing a one spin. I don't even know how these guys.
No, everybody was starting like the regular spin, 1 foot out of the ring and the very back.
Yep, 1 foot out the left. Yeah. And they're all using the trigs, like the Scottish trigs now with the wings. So they're just in a box they have to stay in. Or we would start half out and end up half out, kind of. They're doing like the regular trig, and it has like these little wings that come off the sides, and you have to stay in that whole thing. It's like a Scottish thing they used to do.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I've always just had the regular rectangle.
Yeah, that's what I did too when I threw.
Interesting.
It's
funny how there's still all these little things about the sport. That was a funny sport to me to begin with.
Million weight classes now, and this class and that class, and women's lightweights, women's heavyweights. Like there's no women's classes when I threw. There's no weight class. That's what I liked about it. It was like there was no weight classes. Well, you guys are bigger than me. I'm just small. We started telling, fucking get bigger, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, there's no weight class in the Boston Marathon for me. So you have to get with it or get out. Like, I don't have to tell you.
Ooh, I'm gonna use that Boston Marathon thing.
I use that one all the time. I'm like, hey, there's sports that I can't do because I'm too big. Why do I got to change my sport for you because you're too fucking small? Like, I don't know.
Well, it's kind of with strongman now. Isn't there like 3 or 4 weight classes in strongman?
Yeah, a whole bunch, yeah.
And strongman, it used to be like, dude, we don't give a shit what you weigh. How much can you lift?
Like Franco Colombo had to compete with,
yes,
the 350-pound guys, and he weighed like $185.
Yeah.
You're strong and you can hang, or you can't. That's the way it is.
I think that's a different thing in powerlifting.
It's an American thing. It's an inclusive American thing. Because you still don't find that stuff in Scotland. You don't see a bunch of lightweight guys and stuff. They don't do that. Not that I'm against it. I'm just saying that's the way it's come to that.
I guess I'm not against it, but like when you said earlier, you got the people that are like, well, I gotta stay at 220 because it's healthier or because I look better. It's like, dude, most of the people in my day, it was like, dude, just keep getting bigger.
Yeah.
And like people that stayed in their weight classes were like, I'm having trouble getting bigger. That's why I'm in this weight class.
Yeah. You're not big until your weight class is in letters instead of numbers. SHW, baby.
I'd never, even when I started, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. Like, what's the easiest way for me to get stronger? Just keep getting bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
And I remember I had one partner, Scott, he's about 6'3". And when he started with me, he was like 198. The first time he met Dave, I introduced him to Tate, and he was like, I don't know, 220 or something. And Tate just makes me laugh. I'm like, hey, Dave, this is my training partner, Scott. And he looks over at him, takes his eyes and runs down to his feet, back to his head, down to his feet, and goes, 330. And like walks away. And Scott looks at me and he's like, what? I go, you need to be 330. Dave said so. And he's like, what the hell? How the hell am I going to be 330? Like, start fucking eating.
You have to gain a whole other person.
And then we had lunch with Dave, and I go,
satisfy Dave.
Yeah.
Just because Dave said so.
Dave said, optimize your leverages, get 330.
That's like these kids now in the gym. Like they work out for they're just starting out. They're only working out a few months. And then they talk about going on a cut. I'm like, you're going to cut what? You're never going to grow if you're just cutting all the time. And they cut. They're like exactly the same. I'm like, this is the cut? You still don't have any muscles and you're still not cut. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you still got to get big first.
How long should you bulk? I'm like, 10 years. 10 years? I'm like, yes, 10 years. And it's like, that's minimum. I've been bulking since 1979, dude. I'm in a constant state of bulk. Still at my age, I'm still dying every year, and I'm still trying to get bigger. So
I'll cut when I'm in the friggin' box.
yeah, my doctor telling me I'm a walking time bomb of death. Like, I don't give a shit. I don't know. I watch these reality shows. These people walk around at 800. They're fine. My doctor thinks I'm going to die because I'm 290. Like, fuck you, dude. I die. I don't know.
I used to have that. Actually, me and Scott both. We had our CDLs, and we'd go do our CDL exam, and the doctor would walk in and look up and go, "Huh, not what I expected." I go, "Yeah, because you looked at my weight and you thought you'd be a big fat son of a bitch, didn't you?"
Yeah. Can you even have a CDL of 400 pounds?
I did.
Oh, okay. I know one of the guys in here was always like worrying about his weight.
It was 90, weight doesn't matter. It's your blood pressure.
Oh, is that what it is?
And I was always, I think at one point I had to cut down to, they wouldn't give me the full 2 year. They would only give me 1 year because I was at like 130 over like 90 or something. And I'm like, dude, that's pretty good.
It's really good. That's good for a guy of any size, I think, in my opinion. Experience, I'm like way higher than that. I've had high blood pressure since I was a little kid. I had like just genetically high blood. They wouldn't let me play sports in school because I couldn't pass the physical.
Really?
And I was I was in great shape.
Well, I think it's funny because we're finding out that there's a bunch of bullcrap to all these rules and things that they thought were the case, and like cholesterol. Now they're finding out that the way they looked at cholesterol is not really true. And I even saw a thing the other day where the first guy that did the test, he actually did a test in all these different countries of like, hey, it's the fats that are creating high cholesterol. Well, he was actually getting paid by some of the companies. So he said, I studied this many countries, and he left a whole bunch of countries out because they didn't fit his curve. I'm like, it's all a bunch of bullshit.
Here's what I noticed about blood pressure. And this is like, I've been in the hospital a bunch of times recently, like for like infections and things. And 8 different people a day will come in and check my blood pressure and then get 8 wildly different numbers. So I'm supposed to base my life and my health on this number that they can't even really pin down because one guy does it one way, this girl does it that way. They use a different cuff. They use this cuff. This guy does it a different technique. I'm like, sometimes it's high, sometimes it's good. And then it's high again, and it's good again, and it's high again, it's good again. I'm like, get the hell out of here, man. I'm not gonna fucking worry about this fucking number. I'm done with it.
It's kind of goes back to one of the things about training for me. It's like, dude, there is no perfect training, because if there was a perfect training, there would be one fucking program that works. You just need to find what works for you. Right. So even because I took people's blood pressures. That's part of what I did for a living. It can completely change based on their mentality. It can completely change based on the pain they're in. Not to mention, you're actually, I don't know if people know this, but if you have an old school cuff, you're putting the cuff on them, you're going to put your stethoscope on there, you're going to pump it up, and what you want is you don't want to hear the beat. And then as you lower it, and you don't even have to have the stethoscope, you can watch the needle. The needle will come down and it'll bump. And then it'll bump, and then it'll bump. So the one number is when you start hearing the heartbeat, and then when the heartbeat stops again. That is completely and utterly fucking subjective to how well the person hears that's doing it, or how close they're looking to that needle. I've actually done it. I've actually checked people's blood pressure and then had someone else check it immediately afterwards, and we'll still get 2 different numbers.
I've had that too. The same thing in the hospital. 2 different, like a nurse and then a doctor would come in right after her. Because she'll say it's real high. He'll do it. It's fine.
So you're going to tell me.
And then, when you're in the hospital, they check it 8 times a day. And I was like, just stop checking it then. Because apparently it doesn't matter what number you're getting. Why do you keep checking it? Like, this is the most important thing that's happening right now. I'm having a problem with my foot, and you're worried about my fucking blood pressure, and I'm in the hospital. Like, if I start having a heart attack, just call a doctor. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm in the hospital.
I know, I'm in the hospital.
But yeah, they go, listen, here, when we read it, there's all these differences that could happen. But this is the number you need to be at. This is the exact number you need to be at. I'm like,
here's a bunch of pills to make it lower.
Bullshit. I'm calling bullshit right now.
I am too, man. Like, I know my blood pressure is high because my head feels like it's going to explode. That's what I'm basing it on. Look, I'm a crazy Italian psycho. My blood pressure goes up like a million over a million, 50 times a day. It's like my dad's did when I worked for my dad. Trust me, I've seen it.
I do. You do have two veins right here that I can imagine just pop way out.
Oh my God, dude. You see me when I found the toilet full of shit, the broken toilet. I was ready to close. You know how many times a week I'm like, I am closing this fucking gym down, and you fuckers will be at Planet Fitness tomorrow. I do that at least 4 times a week now. Like I do it my whole life. It's crazy. So I tell everybody, I said, I'll tell you right now, you guys upset me, I'm gonna have a heart attack and die. And when I die, my wife and my brother are gonna have a race to this gym to see who's gonna put the sale sign on the building. And that'll be it. That'll be it. This gym dies with me. So you guys better keep me happy and alive, because that's it. Because me and my brother own this building together, and he wants nothing better than to sell it. If he found out like the offers I've had on this building I've turned down without telling him, he would choke me to death. I've had like $1 million offers. I'm like, nah, we're gonna work out if I sell the building. Like,
dude, if you get $1 million, you can build another place.
I don't want to. I'm too lazy. I'm tired of doing that shit.
I know
I'm
that.
too lazy to do anything anymore, dude.
Well,
pick and choose the things that I do very carefully now. I don't want doing anything. I want to sit there, put a Zin in my mouth, have a little drink, and watch baseball. That's what I want to do at night. I don't want to build a new gym.
You're not even going to watch an exciting, and I love baseball, but it is not the most exciting sport.
You're not watching the Phillies.
It's actually a very good, relaxing
sport. Phillies
sport.
are killing it. Yeah, I know. You don't have to pay attention. You can look at your phone and be like, oh, Bryce Harper just hit a home run. Like,
yes. It's a very relaxed, calming sport to watch.
Right. I don't want to pay attention. I don't want a sport where I have to jump up and down every time something happens. I'm like, oh, he bunted. I don't care.
It's so funny.
My blood pressure goes up.
Steve, dude, we're all together.
5 hours.
Probably close to a couple minutes.
The good thing is, no one's going to be listening to this. I know. No one's going to make it this far into this podcast.
I don't know. You'd be surprised.
What we should do now that we're far enough in where nobody's listening, we should just start talking shit on people. Let's talk shit on one. Let's pick one person each to talk shit on real quick. Now, you would never do that. I couldn't do it. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I could tell.
I should because it'll be funny, but we're not going to.
I'll tell stories, but I try to leave people's names out of it unless I know that they don't care. Like when I talk about Mike, like the story with Mike, Mike doesn't care.
You remember the one time, the last story? Remember the one time we were at the Learn to Train seminar and that girl choked me? Do you remember? Were you there? I think it was the second one I went to. I don't know if you were there or not.
Was that the girl that was like arguing with fucking everything?
Yes. They called it, she was wearing a bat.
And didn't she have like a boyfriend or husband there or something like that?
No, she had a boyfriend after the fact who went crazy over the fact that she was there that weekend, like 3 years later. It's weird. But this girl showed up at the seminar. I forget how it all went down, but she had nowhere to stay. So she showed up at the seminar and we're all like starting to work out, whatever. And she was going around the room to every guy like, hey, do you have a hotel room? And we're all like, yeah, we got to stay with this guy. Can I stay in your room? I'll make it worth your while. Like, no. She came around, eventually came around to me. I'm staying with Croc. And she said it to me, like, do you have a hotel? I'm like, yeah. Can I stay in your room? I'll make it worth your while. I'm like, I can't. I'm staying with this other guy. I'm married. I'm like, oh, okay. So she acted weird all day. We didn't know why she was even there. It was weird. And I thought, because I was the new guy there, I'm like, this is probably like Dave's niece, and he's testing me, and he wants to see about my moral values. So I was like, I will not do that. I'm a good man. I would never do that. And then the next day we were there, and we're watching somebody do some big squats. I'm even you. And she's standing next to me, and she says something about, she's talking to somebody about doing MMA training. And at the time, that was like, I don't know, not many people were doing it. I'm like, I just went like, oh, you too? Everybody with the MMA. Jesus Christ. I just said something like that because she was like annoying all weekend. She was annoying everybody. This girl, without me knowing it, went around behind me. And she was like real muscular, but like thinner, clamped like a rear naked choke on me, and her arm was like a crowbar. It was like a hard, thin. She got that thing just as I exhaled. Like, and I forget. I think I was with Chad Wesley or somebody, and like everybody was like, and this girl's like, and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking just slam this bitch. She weighed like 120 pounds, but she was like a lifter, and I'm just like, fuck, how do I make this stop? And I'm like, the lights are going out. I'm like, oh fuck, and I'm like, she's not going. I'm like, oh, what the fuck. And like, we go to dinner that night. I'm telling Dave, I'm like, that fucking bitch tried to choke me to death. And then Dave was, I used to make Dave laugh so hard that he would like be out of breath. He couldn't make a sound. Like he would choke, like he'd be choking. He thought that was the funniest thing. I said, Dave, it was like when Princess Leia had Jabba the Hutt and she was choking him, except I tapped out like a bitch and he just fucking let her kill him. I should just fucking let her kill me. He thought that was so fucking funny. And I'm like, and it would like went down and like the whole weekend. That's all we laughed about was how this bitch almost killed me. Because I made fun of her.
I don't know how the hell I haven't heard this story.
She was like a stowaway. She didn't even pay to be there. She was a stowaway. She was like snuck in and was trying to scam. Like it was like the weirdest thing all weekend. Then she started dating some big dude a couple of years later. He heard about it. He was all mad at all of this. We're like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? And then it would turn out that guy was making gay porn and stuff. I remember that guy. I forget who he was.
I kind of remember that because I mean, I feel like we had a lot of good people in those seminars, and I had people that would come back a year or two later, but every now and then, man, there were some weird people in there, or people that would. I'm like, why did you pay to come here if you're going to argue with every single fucking coach?
Who was doing that? Was that her? I don't remember if she did that or not.
I don't know if she did. There was one year there was like a couple, and they both. Every fucking time anybody said anything, they're like, well, I don't think that's well, we do it this way. Well, no one came here to hear what you think. So like
by the third one, it got so out of hand. I think women were just coming to sleep with the guys. I'm pretty sure. I can't tell you why I know that, but it was like almost like a groupie fest. Like it turned into, I feel like
I think kind of like like you would have like, cause didn't Dave have like little, you could hang out afterwards for some of them.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm
talking about honestly, the people that were attending the seminar were like the girls were coming, trying to hook up with like EFS guys.
Yeah, I've always been kind of oblivious to that for some reason.
You must have been, because I was right on top of it. That was the one year Dave asked me to be one of the speakers. And I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? He goes, anything you want. I'm like, really? Anything you want. I had no idea what I was going to say until I got up there. And I ended up drawing like a vagina on the fucking whiteboard or something. And afterwards, Dave was like, did I hear that you drew a vagina on the whiteboard? I still remember like the guys that went ahead of me were like, I think Wendler Fry was up there before me. Josh, what's his name? Josh
Bryant.
Josh Bryant was up there, and I was like the last one to go, and I did this, and everybody was just howling with laughter the whole time. I remember Fry afterwards was just so mad at me. He's like, "Way to go, asshole!" Like I went up there and did
why
do a vagina on the board, and everyone thinks it's the greatest thing ever. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know what to say. Like I don't know. I'm a speaker. I'm not a keynote speaker, dude.
But
everybody can get to that.
I think to some instance,
my book had a critic once rated my book and said it was written on a 4th grade level. That critic was my brother. Show you, like, I'm not a smart guy.
See, I would have said 4th grade. Awesome. I thought I was in 2nd. I'm advanced.
If they had a couple more poop jokes, it would have been on a 2nd grade. I left out a few.
Speaking of that, I did write an article for Elite one time, and my goal was to say poop as many times as I possibly could in that article.
Remember the other guy that's right. I remember one of the other athletes that came on the year I came on was the blind strongman who somehow duped Dave into putting him on the team. And
I don't remember there being a blind strongman.
He was blind, but he wasn't really blind. He could see. It was the weirdest thing. And he was goofy as shit. And Dave got so much backlash when this guy started writing articles. People were like, EFS has jumped the shark. They've lost our legitimacy. Who is this guy? What the fuck is he doing? Dave was like, how did I let this happen? I still remember he came to the very first, we all met up in a restaurant before, like the night before the seminar. And that's the first time I met a bunch of the guys, Schwab and those guys were all there. Joe Jordan was there and everything. And this guy shows up and he's like coming this close to everybody's face. Hi, how you doing? I'm Chris. What the fuck is what? I didn't realize he was like legally blind. He was just stumbling over shit. Everything's like, who the fuck is this guy?
I just heard there was this one dude the one year had like these long curly hair and he was all tanned and
The guy that wore the Uggs.
yes. Yeah, we nicknamed him Uggs.
Yeah, we called him Uggs all weekend. That guy's like his name, Antonio or something. He's like a big influencer now, that dude.
Yeah, we like the whole weekend was just
and he was hanging over Dave.
Ripping on him.
I still remember.
I'm surprised he wasn't in tears by the end. He was upset. You could tell he was upset.
I know. Well, he was. We were eating dinner. There's one of those long tables at that place you're eating at, and he's like up in Dave's grill, man. And I still remember texting Dave. I'm like, "Hey, who's your girlfriend?" The guy saw it. He was like, "That fucking guy saw that, dude." I'm like, "I don't give a shit."
He was literally getting shit from every single person.
I know.
We're like, who is this? What is this guy about here? What is
he wore Uggs because he was a ballet dancer and he had like weird feet and something.
Yeah. That one was funny. That was a funny year. I think that was the year we had at the Holiday Inn. We like took all the chairs out of the pool area and we took over like half the parking lot one night.
Yeah, I remember that. We were all hanging around that sweaty parking lot. I remember the one year there was like 97 degrees and we were all like 150 people were jammed in that little tin box of a gym we were in. I'm like, I couldn't believe that. Horrible.
Those were like, I think you're right. I think a lot of people did come because it's like, hey, I don't care if I learn anything. I want to meet all these people.
Exactly. That's what it was. I get to meet Jim Wendler and, Dave and all these other guys and rub elbows with Pulcinella.
Yeah. For me, it was just fun because it was like Dave would always, I think Dave liked when I got mad and yelled at people because he would always put me in like the heavy duty group and I would always see him standing to the side watching, like he'd be watching out of his peripheral, waiting for me to get pissed off. But that's fun for me. I love getting in people's grills and like just yelling at them.
He put me, I remember the one year he had me there teamed up with Buddy Morris. This guy's a legend.
Buddy is a legend.
NFL strength coach. And he's actually really cool.
I love Buddy.
And Ed Cohen, right?
Yeah.
Because me, Buddy Morris, and Ed Cohen, I'm not a coach of any kind, right? It comes time for this group to do the deadlift, and Ed's like, Steve, why don't you take this? And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm going to teach you people on the deadlift in front of Ed Cohen.
Yeah, of the absolute worst fucking situation.
Yeah. I'm like, I did some stuff. Ed Cohen's like, did a good job. I'm like, I did? That's how you said a lot of the same things I would have said. I'm like, I did? I think Chad one time we were coaching. He's trying to teach. He was squatting 900 pounds, but he couldn't. At the time, he just couldn't. He said, "I don't know. You just sit down and you stand up with it again." That's what he said to those people. I'm like, there's got to be more to it than that, Chad. I'm pretty sure.
Well, if it's that easy, let me get under there.
I remember somebody actually complained today. He was like, "Hey, this guy just told me to sit down and stand up." And he's like, "I just squatted 900 raw. Just do what he says." I don't know. That's literally what Chad said to the guy. You just sit down and stand up again. Oh, thanks. Thanks, genius.
I actually had I had forgot about this, but I ran into Joe Sullivan, who's a friend of mine now. I need to get him back on the podcast. And he goes, yeah, do you remember when I came to the Learn to Train seminar? And I'm like, man, I can't, really? And he's like, yeah. He goes, you yelled at me. And I go, well, it does sound like me. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I was squatting and I got down in the hole and you were like yelling at me because I wasn't bracing. And I got up and I told you I was bracing the whole time. And you're like, oh, yeah, smart ass. If you're bracing, how come your belt's loose? And he's like, that really stuck with me.
It's things like that. All worth the money.
Yeah, it was fun because I'm out here on the West Coast. It seems like most everybody's East Coast or Midwest. So it was. I always love doing those. I wish he did more of them now because I get to see all these people that I don't get to see. and hang out and bullshit. And
that was fun. Yeah, they were cool. I remember Joe Jordan pulling a gun on Croc because he tried to, like, he cut off. We were all like caravanning to this restaurant, and Croc came flying up the side, jumped in front of Joey, and took off. And then we got to the restaurant. He didn't realize it was Croc, I guess. And we get to the restaurant. He jumped out of his car. His whole family's with him. You know, and Joe's like, no, that wasn't Joe Jordan. Joey Smith.
Okay, I was gonna say, man, I'm picturing
accent,
Joe Jordan doing that, and I'm like, holy
Joe
crap,
Smith.
I can't see this.
Right. He jumps out of his car. Who the hell was in that BMW? I'm motherfucker. I'm at 45 right now. I'm fucking put up. No. Like, I'm holding him back, and he was like literally gonna fucking like put it in Croc's face.
Now, see, that sounds like Joey.
Like, where'd you get a gun at? First of all, why are you pulling guns out?
Yeah, you go to that gym now. There's probably like 8 guns in there every time there's somebody in there.
Like that here too. Trust me. I think guy brings his gun into the toilet with him.
I did that like the one year I hadn't been there for a couple years, and then Dave's like, "Yeah, Chad, you're leading the, you're the head of whatever group, like the full gear group," and everybody's like, "Oh shit, dude, Joey's not gonna like that," and I'm like, "What the fuck are you guys talking about?" And they're like, "Yeah, Joey, this is usually Joey's group," and I go, "Well, Joey can fuck off. He's just gonna have to learn to deal with it, isn't he?"
Wrong answer.
And then, like, I called him up later, and we talked on the phone, like, after that, and we were both laughing.
Yeah, he's funny.
He's one of those guys where I could see where he can rub people the wrong way. But honestly, it just makes me laugh. Like, I just think it's funny.
He's got the wickedest Southern accent ever, too.
There was a, God, what is it? Sergeant. He was a deadlifter. And he mostly did Wabdol. And he, like, I don't know why, he had a thick Eastern accent, like Sergeant Rock or something like that, they called him.
I remember him.
And, like, he rubbed people the wrong way. I thought he was a great dude. I loved when I got to see him. Because he's thick East Coast accent and just that whole macho, like... And I'm like, I don't know why you guys don't like him. I think he's hysterical. Like, I could hang out with this dude all night. It makes me laugh.
I'm sure I wouldn't have liked it, though.
I am attracted to freaks, I think. I don't know.
Are we all? All right, let's wrap this up.
Okay. Steve, I seriously appreciate you coming on. This was, I might have laughed more in this one than I have in any of them.
That's because I'm absurd.
I love absurd. So thanks for being on. You're welcome to come on anytime, talk about anything. I'm sure we could keep going, but we've already been at this like a couple hours with our minor little technical difficulties. So I'm going to hit my outro, man. Thank you for being on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit couragebarbell.com. Until next time.